I also think a lot of people forget that their kids are going to be grown-ups one day. I think that's probably the biggest factor about all of this. It's not so much that parents go into parenting thinking, right, can't wait to have a little mini me that I can bully or boss around or whatever. I just think they forget that this child is going to grow up, it's going to be a fully functioning adult. It's going to be able to think for itself, come to its own conclusions. And if you're lucky enough, like my parents, they're going to start questioning some of the stuff that you said and did to them. Hey people, welcome back or to another video. For those of you who are both old and new around here, a very warm welcome back. I'm super grateful to have you come and join us. So we're going to be discussing a topic today which has been playing on my mind for a while, and that's more about how parents are often their kids' first bullies. Now, when we think of bullying or being bullied, we automatically in our heads go to, you know, school playgrounds or corridors or cafeterias, or we think of the Mean Girls movie because we always assume, oh, any kind of bullying, it's got to be done from outside of the house. Whereas if you think about it, so much of people's experience with bullying actually does not only come from within their household, but from their very own parents. And it's not until those people are much older in age do they actually realize, I was being bullied and I didn't realize. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, the parents themselves don't realize that their behaviors and their actions and their words have had a long-lasting effect on their children. If you think about it, a lot of the time when a kid's first bullies are their parents, it's usually, I like to think anyway, and I hope that it is in fact unintentional. And the reason it's unintentional is because the parents don't know any different. They're simply just copying what they learned from their parents, and their parents learned it from their parents. And of course, the cycle just continues, which is why a lot of child-free people are called cycle breakers. And that's exactly why a lot of us don't want kids, is because we don't want to repeat the patterns that we've seen within our families. So it's all fair in love and war to be like, that's not me, I would never do that. When I have kids, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and I'm not going to say X and not going to say Y. And it's great that you have that approach and that you want to be different to your own parents, but we operate from the subconscious mind. 95% of our actions daily are operated from our subconscious, and all our behaviors and our thought patterns and the way that we think and the way that we assume and that we perceive the world is in fact from our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind is built up from our experiences and what we've seen and learned growing up from those around us. So what do I actually mean when I say a parent can be their kids' first bullies? The main things that you can see are like fear tactics, control tactics, manipulation, humiliation, not validating a child's feelings, you know, making them feel stupid when they cry, not comforting them when they cry, or laughing when they cry. Stuff like this are all forms of actual bullying and can have a very long-lasting detrimental effect on a child when they're a grown adult. It can have an awful damaging effect on their confidence, on the way they view themselves, on their self-worth. So many things. It honestly, the ripple effect that comes from this, if I went into it in depth, this video would be about like 20 years long, but you can imagine how it would roll out in that person's adult life, like into their further relationships, into their marriages, into their own kids' lives, into their workplace, etc. Through my therapy, what I learned is that my school teachers were bigger bullies than my parents. And school teachers are another one for this. So it's not even just parents, it's school teachers. And I find a lot of people go into the teaching world because it's their way of basically bullying kids. And it is literally a breeding ground for adults who want to vent their frustrations out on small, vulnerable people. And one thing I used to hear a lot in school from teachers is that I was so-called too sensitive. Now, when I was in school, I did cry a lot. I do remember being quite a crybaby. I used to cry at anything. Later on as an adult, obviously I've realized this is now because I'm unfortunately an empath, which I fucking hate. But I'm working on that. But a lot of the time, instead of just asking me what I was upset about, they would just tell me I was too sensitive. They would just say, oh, get over it, or toughen up, or stuff like this, which they think is tough love or teaching me a lesson. You're not actually teaching me anything. You're actually just knocking me down when I'm already down. So what do you think you're gaining from this exactly? A lot of the time when I look back on it, when I was in therapy, a lot of the time it was actually I was crying because I couldn't do the work. Now, I struggled academically. I've always struggled academically. I have always struggled with sitting in a classroom with a fucking book in front of me, being thrown information at. I can't work like that. My brain doesn't work like that. So a lot of the time, if I didn't understand something in class, I would just burst into tears because I knew I had a lot of pressure on me from my parents to perform well in school. So there was that to fucking deal with as well. And there's another thing about fear that I'm going to come back to, because I was constantly scared of being in trouble with my parents for not doing good in school, but I couldn't do good in school because I wasn't academic. So it was like a fucking vicious circle. Did you ever hear from your parents, make sure you get good grades or you're going to like flip burgers or, I don't know, have a shit job, never earn money, never be rich, never buy a car, never find a man, woman, etc. I used to hear this, I've lost count, thousands of times a week. Literally. And it's stuff like that. It's basically everything in life is basically fear-led because our parents were scared. Our parents still have fears. And when they became parents, their fears didn't really go anywhere. So guess who got the receiving end of their fears? Us. We got the receiving end. So if you think about your fears right now as an individual, mine are going to be very different to yours. If you think about your fears right now, they're likely from your parents, if you think about it. So I was always scared of being a failure and not having a good job and not earning enough money and having people think I was thick and stupid and failing in school and grades, getting shit grades, because that's what my fucking parents were scared of. My parents were scared that, oh my God, if she does shit in school, she's never going to get a job. And if she never gets a job, she's never going to have money. And if she never has money, she's never going to be able to buy a house. And it goes on and on and on and on until I actually started having extensive therapy. And I was like, hang on a minute. These aren't my fears. They're my parents' fears. Another tactic I believe that a lot of parents use, and I think sometimes they use it in a bid to help a child or to help push them or encourage them, but it doesn't work, is when they compare them to other people. This is probably one of the fucking worst things you can do to a child, is to compare them to another human being. This happened to me a lot growing up, and I've confronted my parents about this, and we're okay now. We're okay about it. But fuck me, I have needed a shit ton of therapy because of how much I was compared to my brother growing up. And I absolutely hated it because we are such different people with completely different mindsets and skill sets. It's literally like comparing a fucking monkey and a fish. It's literally like saying to a fish, you need to climb that tree the same as the monkey or you're a fucking failure. That's basically how I felt growing up when I was being compared. And it did. It had a massive, massive knock-on effect on my confidence. It then made me feel like, oh my God, if he can do it, why can't I? And if you're a parent and you're watching this and you say this to your kids, you need to understand that that kid's going to remember that all the time. They're going to think that there's something actually wrong with them, when deep down it's not that there's something wrong with them. It's just that their skill set is different. Their mindset is different. The way their brain works is completely different. The way they process information is completely different. If we were all the same, this world would be really boring and quite scary. That this is the reason there are so many adults out here right now walking around. They have absolutely no confidence. They probably have talent. They have shit tons of talent. They've got no confidence. They've got low self-esteem, low self-worth. They second guess themselves doing the simplest of tasks that they know off the top of their head. And if you peel back all the layers, it usually comes from probably something they've experienced in their childhood growing up, whether that's in the household or in school. I also think a lot of people forget that their kids are going to be grown-ups one day. I think that's probably the biggest factor about all of this. It's not so much that parents go into parenting thinking, right, can't wait to have a little mini me that I can bully or boss around or whatever. I just think they forget that this child is going to grow up, it's going to be a fully functioning adult. It's going to be able to think for itself, come to its own conclusions. And if you're lucky enough, like my parents, they're going to start questioning some of the stuff that you said and did to them. And that's not your child being difficult. That's your child wanting answers to the way that you may have behaved or stuff that you said. And I do understand that genuinely, parenting definitely doesn't come with a manual. We get that. That's why so many child-free people don't want kids, is because a lot of the time we don't know what we're doing, and that's fucking terrifying. That is honestly terrifying. But of course, we know that even on a surface level, this is unhealed trauma from a parent simply being passed down to their child. And when their child grows up and possibly doesn't learn anything from it, they simply have their kids, and then the cycle just continues and continues and continues. And this is why we have so many traumatized beings walking around town traumatizing everybody else, because as the saying goes, hurt people hurt people. We don't know any different. This is what we learned in the household, and in a lot of cultures as well. Certain things are just completely normal. You're not going to question something which you believe in your head is completely normal, such as like raising your voice, smacking, silent treatment. If you grew up and you had these behaviors in your household and nobody questioned it, you're likely not going to question it either. But every now and again, you'll get an anomaly in the family. And when I say anomaly, I say that like us lot, like the child-free people who are like, I'm not doing that. You get the anomaly who's like, hang on a minute, that's fucking not normal. I'm not having any of that. Tell me what you meant when you said such and such thing back so many years ago. And you get the odd child who grows up at like, no, what the fuck? Like, why did you do this? Why did you say this? You made me feel like shit. And I think that's also why I did a video like maybe 2 years ago on why so many boomers and their millennial kids aren't talking to them anymore. And it's because I believe millennials are the first generation to put their foot down and be like, hey, I don't fucking like this. I'm going to make sure you're held accountable. And a lot of the time, unfortunately, from the stories I've read and obviously heard from other people I've spoken to in my generation, a lot of the time the parents, the boomers, they can't take accountability for it. They're not taking accountability for their actions or their mistakes or anything like that. They're kind of just either deflecting or saying, they always go back to the, oh, I must be the worst parent in the world line, or they go back to the, well, we didn't have a manual, fine. However, they're not validating how their child is feeling. Now that their child's an adult, and they're questioning their behavior, they usually just get defensive. And this is why I genuinely believe so many millennials are actually no contact with their boomer parents. Kind of off topic, but kind of not off topic. Don't know if I'm going to keep this in the video, so surprise if it is. But if a parent's child grows up, commits a crime, whatever the crime is, commits a crime, goes to prison, I do believe the parents should be held accountable to a degree. If your child's committed a crime, you need to do a sentence as well. Because come on now, this kid wouldn't be in prison. They wouldn't be on this planet if it wasn't for you. So we need to see what you did as a parent to see why your kid's in prison. It's just a suggestion. The only thing that we can obviously hope for as a society is that the next generation learns from mistakes and tries to iron them out. However, I'm not saying that any generation is going to be perfect and any parent is going to be perfect, because the bottom line is nobody's perfect and no one's going to do a perfect job. That doesn't exist. And of course, as a society, we change. So each generation is exposed to different things. The generations growing up now have access to so much more that we didn't have access to. As a millennial, I did not have access to smartphones, and we only had dial-up fucking internet and stuff like this. We're exposed to different things. So each generation of parents or new parents have a different set of challenges when raising the new generation. And I can understand that is so unbelievably difficult, which is why so many people don't want to be parents. That is why a lot of us aren't doing it, is because ultimately, and this is my personal reason, I'm not going to talk for every single other child-free person, but my personal reason, one of them is because, and I've said this to so many of my family members as well, you can't get it right. You're never going to get it right. You are always going to make mistakes. And that's the part I couldn't accept. And that's why I didn't sign up for it. So if you did, that's great. Nice work. Hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please give this video a massive thumbs up. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out.